Welcome, I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Taiwan says it stays on high alert as Chinese naval forces pull back after massive military drills around the island. Authorities keep an emergency response center active while continuing to monitor China's movements. Ukraine says a Russian attack on Odessa injures 4 people, including 3 children. Authorities say emergency services respond as damage is assessed. The United Arab Emirates says it is pulling its remaining forces out of Yemen after Saudi Arabia backs a call for their departure within 24 hours. The move follows a Saudi-led strike on Mukalla port targeting what Riyadh called a UAE-linked weapons shipment, marking a major escalation in the Gulf Rift. The U.S. Justice Department says it still has 5.2 million pages of Epstein-related files to review and needs hundreds of lawyers to complete the work. Officials warn the process will push the final release far beyond the original congressional deadline. Thailand releases 18 Cambodian soldiers under ceasefire after weeks of deadly border clashes. Both sides say the truce eases tensions after fighting that killed over 100 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. Iran's prosecutor general says economic protests are a legitimate move. Any move to create insecurity or damage public property will face a decisive response. He says authorities will act against what they view as externally driven efforts to destabilize the country. China says it will impose an additional 55% tariff on certain beef imports from countries including Brazil, Australia, and the United States that exceed set quotas from January 1st. Beijing says investigations found imports were damaging its domestic industry, with Levi's covering fresh, frozen, bone-in, and boneless beef. Mali and Burkina Faso impose reciprocal travel restrictions on American nationals after the United States adds both countries to its no-entry list. The governments say the move matches measures taken by Washington under President Donald Trump's expanded travel ban. Now for this hour, we start with Asia. Iran's prosecutor general has said economic protests are legitimate, but any attempt to create unrest will be met with decisive response. Demonstrations began after the rial fell to record lows, hitting Tehran and other major cities with shop closures and mass protests. Meanwhile, President Masoud Pezeshkian has called for talks with protest leaders and promised reforms to protect citizens' purchasing power. Inflation has soared, with food prices up to 72% and medical goods up to 50%, fueling public anger. According to the reports, mechanisms will be set up for dialogue, while readiness to respond firmly remains in place. Now for this discussion, we welcome Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now,
thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, looking at this, is Iranian government realizing the power of the people? Because in the past we saw forcefully protests being stopped or controlled, but this time it seems like they are allowing a space for people to speak up.
Well, Suma, the point is that these protests are actually deep-rooted. We are only seeing the manifestation of these protests because there is general discontentment among the public at large with the current regime, and there are triggers which actually have instigated, or I would say which have triggered these protests. If you recall, in 2023 there were massive protests in Iran and the unfortunate death of Masa Amini in the police custody. And that time the protests were actually put down with a very heavy-handed approach of the regime then. Currently, you see, the protest got both the socio-economic issues because socio-economic issues are linked very closely, and they are driven by the students. And you know, even when the Spring Revolution took place in the Middle East, the students were the vanguard. And of late, you have seen how the regimes have changed, whether it was Nepal or Sri Lanka, even Bangladesh. The students have taken a very proactive approach, and they are the ones who actually are leading the protest. And I am sure the Iranian regime is quite aware that student power has to be reckoned, and it is not very easy to quell the protest when the grievances are very genuine. And you know, Iranian economy has taken a big hit over the last more than 2 decades because of the severe sanctions, and today that impact is being felt across the spectrum. You know, and inflation, as you rightly said, has gone to about 72% for general goods, 50% for the medical goods, and their currency Israel has actually a free fall. It is in free fall condition. So therefore, these protests are hitting the rank and file, and the students, of course, have taken it on to protest against the socio-economic issues. But I am sure that they are given space. The Iranian current government, the Pezeshkian president, is known to be slightly more liberal in approach to have a dialogue with the student. I think that's the only way forward. But in the long run, Asuma, I think the current regime has to open out because this heavy-handed approach or this, governance by the religious teacher has limitation, and I think that point is being reached where it is going beyond the tolerance, and economic issues are basically are the trigger, but there's deeper socio-economic problems that are afflicting Iran for quite some time. Asuma.
Yes, and Major General, so in the past we saw dialogues happen too, like you rightfully took us back to when Mahsa Amini demonstrations and everything was happening. They did end up talking or having a dialogue with some kind of you know. Leader or protest leaders, but nothing really changed, or nothing in concrete changed. So do you think this time, now that the government is opening up once the same, let's have a dialogue, or we will have a dialogue, or also the dialogue hasn't taken place, what risks or opportunities do the protest leaders have in engaging with the government once again?
Well, Suma, the point is this time it is the economic issues which are overriding the political issues. When Masa Amini's death took place, that was it more of a social issues. But the economic issues are hitting all rank and file. And if the economy is not on track, I don't think the protests are going to die down. And economy cannot come on track in case the current sanctions which are levied on the Iranian regime are eased out. So therefore, I think the current government will have to tackle the issues on two fronts. One is that how to get the economy at least reasonably on track, means how to soften up the sanction, and secondly, they have to give space to the student, because until they show tangible progress on the economic issues, the students will have a very strong reason to continue with the protest, because it's no more socio, it is more economic, but economic socio are linked. So I think the current regime has to take a very tough call, and they'll have to change the way Iran is being governed, because economic issues are very vital. When they hit the common person, then you cut across everything, and then you have a very common cause. And today I think Iranian protests are being driven by students on a very, I would say, genuine ground of economy, and this cannot be handled just by doing the cosmetic kind of changes. Changes will have to come deep rooted, otherwise the Iranian regime is against a very tough situation, and to my mind, if the wisdom prevails, they'll have to mend their ways, they'll have to give greater freedom to the student, and also bring in serious economic changes, means soften up the sanctions, or else this situation is only going to worsen. Asuma.
Thank you very much, retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Philippines, the Philippines has expressed serious concerns over China's latest military and Coast Guard drills around Taiwan, warning that they could destabilize the wider region. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro has said that the actions undermine regional peace and risk deepening tensions in an already fragile geopolitical environment. He has further added that the scale of China's coercive activities has implications that extend beyond cross-strait relations to the broader Indo-Pacific. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Now, thank you for staying with us, Major General. And now, looking at all the developments that has happened around the drills by China, how do you analyze U.S.'s role in instigating or kind of continuing to selling increasing to selling arms to Taiwan?
Well, Suma, the point is that Taiwan issue is very complex and is very sensitive because as far as the Chinese communist regime is concerned, they have stated over a period of time that integration of Taiwan with the mainland is a leftover agenda of the 1949 the communist revolution. So therefore, all the regimes, communist regime, they have been very sensitive towards Taiwan. But when President Xi Jinping took over, I think he has made it almost like a prestige issue or sovereignty issue that Taiwan must be integrated with the mainland at the earliest. And this have been also part of the policy, the relation, the white paper that came out in 2025 May also talks very upfront about the integration of Taiwan with the mainland. The second issue is that whenever there is either sale of weapons or there is a visit by some dignitaries from America like Pelosi visit, that raised a lot of alarm and also tension. So Chinese have been known to raise the tension and also carry out very high level drills whenever there is a issue with Taiwan, especially with the sale of weapons or otherwise. As far as the Philippines is concerned, they are very sensitive because the Scarborough Shoal, which was given to by the International Court of Justice to Philippines, but the Chinese didn't honor it. So they correctly feel that this issue is no more confined to the Taiwan state. It is the Indo-Pacific issue because lately you also saw the tension rising between Japan and China when Prime Minister of Japan's statement that in case Chinese attack Taiwan, willy-nilly Japan will get involved. So the tension is largely not only confined to Taiwan but largely Indo-Pacific, and this needs to be handled very carefully. But unfortunately, President Trump has taken a very soft approach, and he has stated that these drills or these things keep happening time and again over the last about 20 years. So therefore, I think America has to play very safe, but America has a understanding with Taiwan, and also lately they revised the Taiwan Act, wherein there is an ambiguity that America will come into play in case Taiwan is threatened, but that remains a very sensitive issue. All I can say is that Taiwan issue is no more confined to Taiwan state. It has larger ramifications for Indo-Pacific. Suma.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And what strategic messages are conveyed by these large-scale drills, and how should Taiwan and its partners interpret and respond to these fluctuating patterns of military pressure from China and the increasing frequency of these drills?
Well, these drills are very clear geopolitical message that China is very sensitive to Taiwan issue, and they have the six no's policy, that is no independence for Taiwan, no foreign interference, and no sovereignty, and no arms sales to Taiwan. So they are very sensitive, and they have laid these 6 no's as red lines. So lately there was the understanding or agreement between America and Taiwan to sale of arms, which have not been taken very kindly by the Chinese, and also the certain statements which have been made by the leaders like in the Prime Minister of Taiwan, and also Philippines. Well, Philippines is also very sensitive. As I said, they have a territorial dispute, and Chinese have actually gone very close beyond the 9 dash line to the Philippine coast. So the point is that Taiwan issue is complex issue. There is a strategic ambiguity as far as America involvement is concerned. So also about Japan also, they have not come out very clearly despite the statement by their Prime Minister. And at the same time, the weapon sale goes on. Taiwan is also keeps increasing their defense budget, also their defense preparedness. The point is that as far as China is concerned, they want the integration of Taiwan with mainland earliest better or earliest possible. But at the same time, they have stated very clearly in their white paper and also in the defense statements that Taiwan issue remains very central to the sovereignty of China, and in case this integration cannot be done by peaceful means, then the arms means or the military option always is there. So the point is, I think this has to be played out very, very discreetly, and effort should be made not to raise the tensions, because tension in this region will actually have implications for larger Indo-Pacific region and not only for Taiwan state. So I think it's uh, diplomatically this needs to be handled, and it should be played down and not aggravated, because it is not in anyone's interest to have tension in this region. While Chinese are very proactive of late, but then I think this needs to be handled diplomatically. And in the latest national security strategy of China, of America, they have said that while China is our adversary, but they would like to avoid conflict on with China on any of the issues, and especially over Taiwan. So I think that diplomacy is the only answer, and all sides must play down this issue for the larger good of the region. Asuma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. China is tightening its grip on beef imports. Beijing has announced it will impose additional tariffs of up to 55% on beef shipments from countries including Brazil, Argentina, Australia, and the United States, starting on January 1st, 2026, tomorrow. The move kicks in when imports cross fixed annual quotas and will remain in place for 3 years until the end of 2028. China says the decision follows an investigation that found rising beef imports have hurt domestic producers as prices fall and demand slows in the world's second largest economy. Under the plan, each country gets a yearly quota. Imports beyond that limit faces the steep levy. Brazil gets the largest quota at 1.1 million tons, followed by Argentina, Australia, and the United States. China is also suspending parts of its free trade agreement with Australia related to beef. Officials insist these are temporary safeguards aimed at stabilizing the local industry, not shutting down global beef trade. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Jayjit Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayjit, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, why has China decided to do this move now?
It's interesting to note that China actually changed some of its internal regulations so that it can respond very quickly to issues around trade. And some of the observations at that time, which is a couple of days ago, was that it was done to weaponize trade. But also, in addition, some of its sectors have been weakening up. The inputs for the beef industry is actually corn, and we had seen how the corn market has been going up and down, and then China shifted its procurement of corn from the US to Brazil, and the corn prices going up. So one of the possibilities is that the Chinese beef industry has become slightly uncompetitive because of the feedstock prices going up. And in addition, you would see that the amount of imports coming into China in the beef sector has been growing quite steadily. Now, if China needs to get into some kind of a conflict in future, and most of its food is dependent on imports, which includes beef, which also includes other kinds of food grains, and if they get into a conflict around issues such as Taiwan, then China needs to make sure that its food supply is kept intact. If its supplies of beef is outside, and 37 million tons coming in through imports, then that can be used to actually put pressure and leverage on China, and which is why China wants to strengthen its domestic industry, increase its beef output, and that can only happen if the pricing is protected, if the domestic pricing for beef is protected, and competition from outside is reduced through the tariff interventions. And that really seems to be the reason why China has stepped in to put an additional quota, and it's quite significant by putting an additional tariff, and it's about 55% of tariff. Earlier also, they, a couple of days back, they put in tariffs of about 42, 43% on dairy products coming in from Europe. So you will see all the food products, they want to make sure that the domestic production increases quite significantly, so that Europe and US and the Western countries cannot use food as a point of leverage when China gets into a conflict. And that's what seems to be playing out in terms of the geoeconomics that we see in this particular case.
Thank you for shedding light on the background of this. And now, what economic effects could this, China's quota-based tariffs have on global markets and exporting countries of countries' agricultural sectors?
Well, very, very significant. China is a very large importer of beef, and as we mentioned, 37 million tons is being imported by China. About 1.1 million ton comes from Brazil. So what China is basically saying is that we will give quotas, and as per WTO safeguard norms, China is well within its rights to actually put in its safeguards once these quotas are exceeded, and that's what China is doing. So the impact of it will be for the beef growing or the beef industry in Brazil and in Argentina, in US and Australia, where there will be a reduction in demand, and therefore this industry, which is the beef industry and the downstream, will significantly get impacted. And what I mean by downstream is that the hoofs of the beef actually go into gelatin and other industries. So those downstream industries will also get impacted once the demand from China goes down. So there will be a significant amount of repercussions in the main industries as well as in the downstream industries.
And lastly, Mr. Jaijit, what are the potential implications of this suspending parts of free trade agreements for investor confidence in future trade negotiations for China?
China's the world's faith in China as a fair trading partner has already diminished quite significantly, especially after COVID, and where they completely stopped supply of products which they had signed up for. Not only that, they did not allow products coming from capacities which are owned by foreign countries and foreign companies to be sent outside of China, even though those capacities were located within China. And therefore, there's already a lot of question mark on trusting and the faith in China as a trustworthy trading partner. With that in the background, what they've done with taking out certain parts of the free trade agreement with Australia, taking away beef as part of the free trade agreement, further impacts the trustworthiness of China as a fair and dependable trading partner. It's for the detriment of China as a global trade partner.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Jaijit for joining us today as an economist and finance expert and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. To Bangladesh, thousands of mourners have gathered in Dhaka for the funeral of former Prime Minister and Bangladesh's National Party chairperson Khalida Zia, one of the most influential political figures in the country. Khalida Zia, Bangladesh's first female Prime Minister and a two-time leader of the country, has passed away on December 30th at the age of 80 following a long illness. Zia's death has sparked nationwide mourning, tributes from across the political spectrum, and international reactions, underscoring her significant role in shaping Bangladesh's modern political history. However, Zia's namaz-e-janaza is being held at the South Plaza of the Jatiya Sangsad Bhavan, the National Parliament complex in Dhaka, after which she will be laid to rest beside her husband, former President Ziaur Rahman, at his mausoleum in Shere Bangla Nagar. Meanwhile, the funeral has drawn significant regional attention, including India's participation, as India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar has landed in Dhaka to represent India and have met Khalida Zia's son, Tariq-e-Rahman, and handed over a condolence letter from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, expressing grief over the loss. Now we move on to our next news. Scientists at Massachusetts Institute of Technology have developed a method to rejuvenate the immune system in aging bodies. Using mRNA, liver cells are being temporarily turned into immune-boosting factories, producing signals that are normally generated by the thymus. In older mice, T-cell populations were increased, vaccine responses were strengthened, and outcomes in cancer immunotherapy were improved following the treatment. The new approach relies on three key immune-boosting signals that are delivered to the liver using lipid nanoparticles. It is said by the researchers that the strategy could eventually allow humans to maintain stronger immunity and healthier lives as they age, with further studies planned to investigate broader immune benefits. That's all we have time for. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.